Okay, we're live.
Thank you, Karen. All right, so I will call to order today's August the 17th meeting of the Autonomy Conservation Authority and our regular Board of Directors meeting. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement, where we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to First People and their care for and their teachings about our earth and their relations. May we honor those teachings. Thank you, everybody. I guess I'll be looking for approval of today's agenda. I get that from Dawn and Pat. All in favor? Excellent. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to delegations, which there are none, which then brings us to the minutes of the meeting held on June 15th, 2023. Looking for adoption of those minutes. Mike, Ron. You good with that, Ron? Good. All in favor?
Yeah, Ron Ashmore, yeah.
Perfect. All right, and those are approved. I don't believe there's any business arising from those minutes. I don't see any.
No.
Perfect. Then we'll move on to informational presentation. So we'll look at our report number 2023-052, the Low Water Drought Program Overview Presentation. And I believe Meredith is going to run us through this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Meredith Carter, and I'm responsible for the Watershed Management Program here at Autonomy Conservation. This program involves a number of water-related activities and services, which include flood forecasting and warning, water quality and quantity monitoring, drinking water source protection, and low water response. These programs and services provide information and communication support to our municipal partners, watershed residents, and the province to ensure compliance with current legislation and access to information for use by municipal emergency managers and the public related to both water quality and quantity. I'm pleased today to introduce Gordon Earle, Water Resources Technologist, who will provide an overview for you of the Low Water Response Program. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine, Gord. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for inviting me to provide you with this presentation. I will go through just an overview of the Low Water Response Drought Program offered by Autonomy Region Conservation Authority in cooperation with our local water managers and users. Next slide, please. So, what is low water drought? Well, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, really, depending on what your needs are for water, whether it's domestic, agricultural, industrial, commercial, recreational, or other use. Unlike other natural hazards, such as wildfire and flood, drought is a slow onset, creeping natural hazard. It's defined as a period of abnormally dry weather that, if it persists long enough, will impact local economies, people, and the environment. There are various meteorological and hydrological components of drought, and there's a list there. We primarily, for the purpose of the Low Water Response Program, look at precipitation and surface water. That is quantity of precipitation received, quantity of surface water flowing through area, rivers, streams, and creeks. We may also sometimes look at air temperature as in things like the number of days above 30 degrees Celsius, where the maximum temperature reaches at least 30 degrees Celsius. This is indicative of much greater than normal water demand, evaporation, transpiration. Next slide, please. So the Ontario Low Water Response Program, where did it come from? Well, low water is a hazard identified in Ontario's Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. And since 2000 and following the 1998-1999 drought, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry has been responsible for ensuring the province is prepared in dealing with drought conditions. The Ontario Low Water Response Program, therefore, was developed by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, OMAF, MMAH, what was at the time Economic Development and Tourism, AMO, and Conservation Ontario. Low water drought is managed, overseen, that by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Surface Water Monitoring Center, which is located here in Peterborough, and it's delivered using what's known as the Ontario Low Water Response Program. The Surface Water Monitoring Center's Low Water Response Program is designed to coordinate both the provincial and local efforts in managing drought conditions. Despite the use of the word response in the title, the Ontario Low Water Response Program primarily deals with drought mitigation and preparedness to minimize the effects of drought. And we also use existing tools and existing legislation on a watershed basis. So it's very locally focused. Next slide, please. The Ontario Low Water Response Program identifies 3 levels of drought. The level 1 is a very early indication of possible low water conditions. There may be potential for water supply and problems. So we're looking at the precipitation receipts, we're looking at the flow levels, and if we see them dipping below the level 1 threshold, this would be an early indication that there's possible drought conditions and potential for water supply problems. Level 2, there's an increased potential for water supply problems and low water conditions. At level 3, this is the most serious condition, indicating a very high likelihood of low water conditions. This increased likelihood that water supply does not meet demand, and there's more severe and widespread impacts to the local economies, social and environmental. Next slide, please. So, what activities occur to minimize these impacts? With each level, it progresses through each level what the activity, what the action might be. At level 1, we are voluntarily asking folks in the watersheds, that's residents, businesses, industrial use, everyone, to voluntarily reduce their water usage, particularly non-essential use, by 10%. And then at a level 2, we increase this conservation measure to add an additional 10%. So now we're asking folks to reduce usage by 20%. And we're also increasing the communication efforts. Level 3, because this is the most severe level, the local water response team tailor makes the response to suit the local environment. So that's the local needs, the local uses. So for example, to address demand, mitigation measures could include increased voluntary conservation measures, such as increasing now to maybe 30%, or implementing mandatory non-essential water use restrictions, such as restrictions that would say you cannot water lawns, you cannot wash your car in your driveway, and these would be enacted and enforced under the Municipal Act. So there's a couple of notes here just that to be aware of, and that is that the declaring a level 3, it does not imply that there is a legal requirement of a municipality to restrict or regulate water use, and it does not represent a declaration of a municipal emergency. Also, level 3 declaration is not in any way connected to drought compensation. Next slide, please. Water response teams. So water response teams are made up of local water users and water managers, and their role is to be prepared and mitigate water supply problems. So the purpose of the water response team then would be to facilitate a coordinated effort of local activities and actions to minimize the low water impacts. In each area, the teams are tailor-made to the watershed. So conservation authority, local government, that's the municipalities, provincial, federal government ministries and agencies. So those provincial ministries that have a primary responsibility for water management, such as the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks, MMAH, and on the federal level, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and others. Then there's also other local groups, users and special interests. So indigenous communities, agricultural community, recreational center, dominant local commercial industrial users, special interest bodies. And all of those acronyms there would be Peterborough County Federation of Agriculture, Trencham Waterway, Federation Ontario's Cottagers Association, Ontario Power Generation, Peterborough Utilities, Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, Ducks Unlimited, Peterborough Green. Those would all be local groups, users, and special interests. These teams, they do not possess any unique legislative authority. They are to use existing tools, existing legislation, existing powers. The teams are empowered to declare a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 drought or low water condition. Next slide, please. So, autonomy region, water response team. I'm just going to discuss with this slide what ORCA's role is. So the ORCA first has been involved in flood for a very, very long time, but we only just got involved with drought starting in 2000, when the Ontario Low Water Response Program was first came to fruition, was initiated. And then since 2001, the Ontario Low Water Response Program, it has been a component of Autonomy Conservation's regular business. So it is informed by a document developed by the Ministry of Natural Resources called the Ontario Low Water Response Program. And that document, latest version was 2010. There's been some modifications since then in 2012 and 2016 following some significant drought years. So the role of Autonomy Region Conservation Authority was to establish and lead the water response team, and this has included things like provide a watershed characterization, provide watershed monitoring, organize and facilitate the local water response team meetings, facilitate coordinated communications among the membership, provide low water drought notification to the province. That is, we inform the Surface Water Monitoring Center, who informs Emergency Management Ontario, etc. And we manage the water response team membership. And in this, we are trying to ensure that the team membership accurately reflects a balance of local water supply and users within our watershed. And the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority is also empowered to declare a level 1 and a level 2 without having first convened a meeting of the water response team. However, if the Conservation Authority chooses to declare a level 1, level 2, then we are required to convene a meeting of the water response team within 1 week of that declaration to present the evidence. That would be the precipitation numbers, the flow numbers, etc. Next slide, please. The role of municipalities. Well, municipalities are very important as they supply water for essential, important, and non-essential use by area residential, commercial, industrial, and recreational users. As WRT members, their role is to foster a culture of water conservation. All members do that. They also maintain communication links with large local water consumers, so agriculture, dominant commercial, industrial operations within their jurisdiction, etc. They recommend, lead, and promote mitigation for short-term and seasonal low water drought conditions. And they develop water management plans and deliver mitigation strategies for long-term low water drought conditions. And they provide useful information to the water response team about the municipal water supply, the demand, and local conditions. Now, this is maybe objective information. It also may be anecdotal. Next slide, please. We also, as mentioned before, there are federal and provincial governments with responsibility for regulating water supply. Primarily, there are 5 provincial ministries: the MNRF, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Municipal Affairs and Housing, Agriculture, Food, Rural Affairs, Tourism, Recreation, and Sport. In our area, the 3 main, most important, say, would be the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, MECP, and Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs. And these ministries, they all work in cooperation to manage Ontario's water resources. One important note, though, is their membership on the water response team. They are there to provide advice. They are not there to they're like non-voting members, non-decision-making members on the WRT. And at one time, we also had federal involvement when Department of Fisheries and Oceans had an office here in Peterborough. Then they were also members. Next slide, please. So then we go to the other local groups, users, and special interests. Their participation also very important. And includes local Indigenous communities, the dominant local industries, that's hydro OPG, for example, recreational users, that's a Trent Severn Waterway, Federation Ontario Cottagers Association, and special interest bodies such as Ontario Federation Anglers Hunters, Ducks Unlimited, Peterborough Green Up. And their role is to provide useful information to the water response team about their sector-specific low water drought impacts. And again, it's maybe both a combination of both objective and anecdotal information. They actively promote water conservation activities, actions. So when we go into a level 1, a level 2, level 3, they would actively promote to the sector they represent the associated water conservation activities actions. They are, like municipalities, to prepare for short-term drought, and they lead their sector in development of sector-specific mitigation to be implemented in response to the level 1, level 2, level 3, and they prepare for long-term by leading their sector in developing and delivering long-term sound water management and prevention of the degradation of water quality and quantity. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that we monitor precipitation receipts and we monitor stream flow. And this slide just tells you how we look at those. This is standard across the board and is part of the Ontario Low Water Response Program document that lays out all of this. But what we're doing with precipitation, there are 2 indicators. The first indicator, we're basically looking at the total receipts received for either a 1-month period, a 3-month period, or an 18-month period, and we're comparing those against what would be the historical normal or long-term average. And then so for the 1 month, say for August, we would look at the total amount of rainfall received at the end of this month and compare it with what was like the average for August over the course of the last 50 years. And we do the same then for the 3 months ending August 31st and for the 18-month period ending August 31st. Then we would look at these, and if they dropped below an 80% of the historical, if the current total dropped below, say, 80%, that would be a level. If it dropped below, that would be a level 1. If it dropped below 60%, that would be a level 2. And if it dropped below 40%, that would be indicative of a level 3 low water drought condition. There's a couple of nuances to this. You cannot go into a level 1 from no level only based on a 1-month precipitation. It has to be either a 3-month or an 18-month. A second indicator of precipitation is the number of weeks with minimal rain. And a week with no rain would be a week when you receive less than 7.6 millimeters of rain, and we would have to see at least 3 consecutive weeks with less than 7.6 millimeters of rain. And this is only if the watershed is already under a level 1 or level 2 condition. Now, the stream flow, this one we don't look at the normal here. We're looking at the lowest average summer month flow. So in our region, the lowest average summer month flow tends to occur in August. So we look at what was the historical average flow for the month of August, and then we compare all current months against that. So, and if it drops below 70, if the current month drops below the 70% of the lowest average summer month flow, then we would be consider that we were potentially in a level 1. If it's 50%, it's level 2. If it's 30%, it's a level 3. And in the spring, this is there's another little caveat to this, in that in the spring it would be 100%, 80%, and 50%. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of how I might present precipitation data. So here you're seeing what was the precipitation receipts at the Peterborough Municipal Airport in 2016. And some of you may remember that 2016 was a particularly dry and hot summer. We had 29 days that year where the air temperature reached 30 degrees C or above, and we set records for lack of precipitation totals for 4-month, 5-month, and 6-month. And when I say records, I mean looking back over the entire historical precipitation record, which dates back to Confederation. So, and there was a lot of impacts, local impacts as a result of this. But this is how I would present it. What you see in the blue bars are what we actually received that month, and the black line is what we would normally expect. The yellow line is the level 1, the orange line level 2, and the red line level 3. And you can see 3 out of 4 months there are very clearly below the level 3, and 1 bar is just kind of on the level 3. So that's when it was dry and hot. Next slide, please. And this is how I may present the stream flow. So this would be Jackson Creek, downtown Peterborough. Behind the King Street parking garage, there's a gauging station there. And you, again, this one we're comparing against the lowest average summer months. So that's August. And you can see that in June, we are at a level 2, July level 3, August level 3, September level 3. And then things start to recover in October, November, when it looks there like we're at a level 1. December, we come out of that. And again, this was 2016. There was almost no water in these streams. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that we would notify the province, and this is a map of Southern Ontario showing current conditions across Southern Ontario. And this is indicating that 3 conservation authorities are in a confirmed level 1. In 2016, that map was orange, indicating all of Southern Ontario was in a level 2, if not a level 3. Next slide, please. Well, I wish to thank you very much for allowing me to make this presentation, and through the chair, I would invite you to ask me any questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gord, for taking us through that. I know we've been through those low water meetings a few times over the years, this year not being one of them. A plethora of rainfall, as everybody I'm sure is aware, is how often they have to mow their lawn and pick mushrooms. But so any questions for Gord? Yeah, Director Black.
Thank you to you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. It was interesting. Just a couple of quick questions. You talked about enforcement in a couple of different areas, but does the WRT actually have any enforcement, or does that really fall back on municipal bylaws to have watering restriction bylaws that they can enforce to enforce the different levels of 10%, 20% reduction? How would that enforcement work?
Through the chair, the WRT itself does not have any legislative authority. However, municipalities may, through their municipal bylaws, link some water restrictions to the declarations of various levels by the WRT. That said, within our watershed, I am not aware that any say, for example, lawn watering restrictions are directly linked to any declaration by the local water response team. Most municipalities in our area have water lawn, every other day kind of water lawn restrictions, but those are mostly for technical reasons, capacity reasons for their water, their drinking water production facilities, water, as opposed to directly linked to water conservation because of a drought concern.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up, Chair.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so who's actually on the WRT at this point? Is there a standing committee, or is it made up once you feel there's a need to bring a committee forward? Are there standing members on that?
Through the chair, yes, there is a membership. It is there's a standing committee. The Conservation Authority leads the facilitation of the meetings and the organization and facilitation of those meetings. And the membership is the local municipalities, the three main provincial ministries responsible for water management in our area: MNRF, MECP, and agriculture. And then we have that list of local special interest groups. So we have let's say Peterborough Green Up. I'm not sure if all of these are still there. At various times, we've had Ducks Unlimited, Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. We've had represented OPG, a few others. Sorry, I can't remember them all. But every year, we will do a review of those. And we try to one of the Conservation Authority's responsibility is try to ensure that we have a good balanced representation of the water users and water managers in our area. Oh, Trent Severn Waterway would be one that's on there too. Yeah.
Yes. So it's specifically staff from the municipality are asked to put their name forward.
That's correct. That's correct. We have
Okay.
a staff list. That's I understand your question, Director. It is your staff that participate in these meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
As a follow-up, please, Chair.
So I'm just going to also say that from the board's position, Chair Huntley chairs those meetings, and Vice Chair Metcalf also attends. So you're welcome to attend, but they are regularly there, also chairing those meetings and the agenda and the flow of information as well.
Great. Thank you.
Right, Director Wilford, you have a question?
Ron, you sort of stole some of my thunder. A lot of the municipalities in Ontario, I would say 75 to 80% of them have already passed a bylaw for the thresholds on the water levels. One of my question is, and they have set fines if they go past what we've already said on a level. Okay, you can't wash cars in a level 2. If you wash your car, you're going to get charged $50. It's a fine. But what my question is who's overall says that we are in a level 1, level 2, level 3? Would it not be our own water resources right here, our water people that are looking after our wells, etc., or is it the Conservation Authority? And who supersedes who?
So through the chair, the decision is made by the water response team as a collective.
So like if a municipality does not agree with what you're saying, that's what I'm trying to get at. Who supersedes? Who is boss?
I don't know. Through the chair, every municipality in our watershed does have a representative on our team, and they are most usually the local community emergency management coordinator. And this is generally because of the responsibility of the municipalities under the Emergency and Civil Protection Act. So similarly to flood, right?
Right, because the main reason that a lot of municipalities enacted the bylaws so they wouldn't have to enact the Emergency Act.
And through the chair, we work on, so we do not work through a vote, not voting. So there is not, it's not a majority. The Conservation Authority, myself in particular, will look at all the indicators and present the data. But what we're looking for is the consensus of the group, and what we emphasize with this group, and the group itself emphasizes, is that the spirit of the water response team is cooperation and coordination.
Okay.
Thanks, Gord. So just to clarify that, so Gord does do all the scientific data, and he brings a lot of statistics and a lot of charts and a lot of, fact-based evidence, and that's what's presented to that to the group. And typically, if all the data is saying that there's a low water situation, then it's kind of hard to argue it on an emotional basis when the facts are
Right.
sitting there. But I think, Pat, where you're going with it is, perhaps the municipalities within the watershed should tie their bylaw directly to it, and instead of having it as kind of an interesting endeavor and a guideline, make it a little bit, have a little more teeth to it.
Okay.
All right. Director Duguay, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair Huntley. Mr. Earl, when has a level 3 drought condition been identified in the watershed in the last 30 years?
Through the chair, until 2016, when we had experienced that severe drought, no water response team had the authority to be able to declare a level 3. What the program required of the water response team was to gather data, and mostly objective data and information on what were the social, economic, and environmental impacts of the drought condition, and then present that to what was called the Ontario Water Directorates Committee. And then the Ontario Water Directorates Committee had the authority to declare a level 3 based on that. What happened in 2016 was, like I had said about the drought condition was severe, and it was spread right across southern Ontario, and the map was orange, but it couldn't be red because all conservation authorities, all water response teams found it extremely onerous and difficult, time-consuming, almost impossible even, to provide the level of information that the Ontario Water Directorates Committee was looking for. So that's when there was a number of meetings that occurred, and between water response team representatives and the province, and the program has since been changed, starting in 2017, and now the local water response team does have the authority to declare a level 3. However, we just haven't reached that level yet since then. So in the past 6 years, we haven't reached a level 3 condition.
So then, I have perhaps, Mr. Chairman, a couple of related questions in line with Director Wilford's comments. While you were chatting, I was reviewing the 2016 drought conditions, and I recall there was a period where it was dry. Then we had a period where it was extremely wet. So the conditions, a drought condition, for example, in the adjacent farm community and farm area, could be very different than that, and the social and economic implications than that of, say, a city. So the city may, while a city might be experiencing similar dry conditions, the economic impacts would be very different because we have piped water service. I mean, I believe our city and many others already say in the summer months, you have offsetting water, engaged lawn water, and all those programs have been around for some time. So the WRT, the response group, it could be a circumstance if it ever escalates to a level 3. Our rural municipalities within the watershed may have a very different economic lens than might the city. So the city might say, we acknowledge there may be drought-like conditions, but the economic impacts, from my perspective, would be different, may challenge a lot of our urban trees and urban woodlots, but we do have piped water different from, so that's just a consideration. What's the cost annually to offer this program overall? I'm assuming this is something done that's overall, there's staffing. I mean, we have, I don't know if it's Mr. Noble from the city that serves on your committee. She's involved with emergency planning, but I'm very curious what the cost would be to municipalities to carry out this program on an annual basis.
Jeanette, do you care to answer that one? I think you might have that one handy, don't you?
Yeah, I actually don't have that information right in front of me, but I'm happy to provide that at a later date if that's okay, Chair Huntley.
Yeah.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair Huntley, those are the extent of my queries at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Mr. Metcalf, Director Metcalf.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments. I think the water response team is a collection of I would say experts in their fields that are coming together and taking the information. So by Gord leading it from the conservation end and having the other groups there, it's getting that knowledge out, and Meredith might be able to sort of provide context to this. As far as the cost, and I mean, this is just, I don't believe there's a whole lot of cost to this. All of these programs are done through the Conservation Authority anyway, and it's just really a meeting, called twice a year, possibly. It depends on those levels. So it's not that I don't believe there's a whole lot of extra work done. This is gathering this information and providing it to the municipalities so that they can make a decision. And if we look on page 5 of the presentation, the municipality is not held to the information, the professional information provided by the water response team. So to me, it adds a level of information for municipalities to continue to make wise decisions with water. So I don't know if Meredith has anything to add to that, but that's my take on the water response team and the information that they can provide.
Thank you. I don't know, Meredith, if you have a question you want to follow up with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just very briefly. Yes, Vice Chair Metcalf did a great job of explaining that. The Conservation Authority is certainly providing communications and information to the members on the group that all have an interest in water management or water use. So it's certainly that, yeah, he's correct. And the meetings are at the call of the chair and as required. So not a regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ashmore, I think you've been trying to flag me down there for a minute.
Thank you, Chair Huntley. Through you to Mr. Earl. Thanks for your presentation there. When you mentioned on your presentation, I think it was the level 3, and it was, I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but 30% reduction in water usage. Now, Director Duguay, he mentioned about, and he made a good point about the rural-urban divide, and there is a big difference between water usage in the urban area and the rural area. So if these level 3s are ever declared, would they be looking at potentially, for example, farmers reducing their irrigation by 30%, or their water haulers are, say, if they go to the Lindsay, I know Lindsay's in Kawartha, but as an example, water hauler would go to the Lindsay plant over here, or they would go to Millbrook, for example, and they would be told to use 30% less water so they can deliver that water to the farm customer, as an example. So irrigation, it's not just irrigation, there's other uses in the rural areas that they use water for farms. Would you look at that implication? Like that could be quite a significant implication for food production and agricultural production if we're telling farmers to potentially limit or reduce their water usage by 30%. I know this is on the high side, but would that scenario ever, come to a point where that would be the case, where that would actually happen if there is a level 3?
Sure. I think you're muted there, Gordon.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yeah, through the chair. So the water usage is divided into 3 categories. This is essential, important, and non-essential. When we are talking about conservation measures, voluntary conservation measures to reduce 10, 20, or 30%, we are talking about non-essential use. Agricultural use is considered essential, important, or essential for the sake of its food production. So the water response team in its communications is very clear that we're talking non-essential water use is what we're asking folks to cut back on.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that.
Any more questions? Oh, well, Gord, great discussion, and you got a lot of people thinking about the water use and what the committee there is for. I'll look for a receiver of Gord's report. Mr. Duguay, Mr. Ashmore. Thank you. And all in favor? Great, so received. Thank you very much, Gord and Meredith, for the services.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to our reports for approval. We have report 2023-053, the other programs and services, otherwise known as our category 3s. So Jeanette, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report in front of you is in front of the board is seeking approval of two items. Again, often referred to as category 3 in the programs and inventory as per the regulations. And so one is the climate change program description. You might recall at our June meeting, we had provided our report for the board. And so this is a program description that needs to be attached to our category 3s. And back in January of 2022, it was still under development where the other 2 programs descriptions were brought to the board. And the second component is just an opportunity for increased transparency and understanding around how category 3, I'm calling it a funding model, in preparation for our 2024 budget. And so in June of 2022, the board did pass this funding model and the cost apportionment agreement. And so again, this is for the board to have a understanding and also for just our public transparency. So I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeanette. Any questions about saying category 3 in this report? No, seeing none, then is that to move it, Mike, or you got a question?
No, a quick question for Jeanette. What's just to quickly, what's our timeline on getting all the agreements again? October 1st, right there. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So I did include where the municipalities have signed off and where there's still ongoing discussions. And that's really also just to make sure that the directors are aware of this. So in October, the authority needs to inform the municipalities where we don't have current agreements in place. The effective date of the regulation is by the end of this year. So December of 2023. effectively January 1st, they need to be in place. And they need to be in place for two reasons. One is, again, for the levy component, but also to provide the services. So if a municipality felt that they didn't want to sign it from the levy perspective, it would also then hinder our ability to provide the service in terms of things. So there's two components to that. Those are services and things that were always historically a part of our programs and services. Overall, the value is very, there's not a lot of materiality to this in terms of it. So for us, for Otonabee, the entire category 3 for our 2023 budget is 37,500. So divided amongst 8 municipalities.
And to put very simply, category 3 is the category that provides all of the fun stuff that the public can do for the municipality, correct?
You're correct. It's the very public facing things. So our education and stewardship programs, our tree planting programs, our seedling programs. So very much the public facing, engaging our school communities and your municipalities, those sorts of programs. That's what these funds help support.
Right.
Alongside the many grants and things that we also get to offset this.
So the public engagement part is very high in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I guess, Jeanette, there's a few outstanding municipalities that haven't signed. Do you foresee any issues with those municipalities, or you think we'll have this wrapped up by October?
I'm confident that we will have it wrapped up. I have had discussions with a lot of the CAOs and another upcoming one with the City of Peterborough staff. So I'm confident that that they'll be done. But it's I'm using the word or the phrase "time is of the essence" now in terms of getting this across the finish line.
Okay. Thank you. And Director Taylor, question?
Thank you, Mr. Huntley. No, not a question, just a comment about that. I understand that the CAOs from a number of these municipalities met with Jeanette just a little while ago. And our township, and I think several of the others, were just constrained by summer schedules. We only have, for example, one meeting in August. It's already happened. So there's no hole up at our township, or even I'm not sure about the others. I can't speak for them. Just a matter of trying to fit everything into the August meeting. It wasn't possible to get this one in, but it'll be coming to our township in September.
Thank you, Director Taylor. I think I'm in the same situation. All right. Is any other questions, or can I look for approval of this report? Mr. Duguay, was that a?
Yeah, sorry. I just needed to, I had to print something for this meeting. Sorry. I can advise that City of Peterborough, I've had recent discussions with CAO Reyna. He and I will be chatting further in light of the myriad of changes been made to the Planning Act. Again, the implications and the sort of the capacities of the city and the services they can provide in light of some of the recent changes and more that are coming by way of the 2023 PPS growth plan. We just want to, it's a bit more complex in an urban environment. So he and I are going to be chatting about that with both, and I believe Councillor Baldwin and Vasiliadis will likely be part of that. Just to put that, let the group know.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Duguay. And do you want to move that report?
Me?
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
All right, thank you. And Director Black? All in favor? Excellent. So approved. Moving on to the next report is.
Mr. Chair, can I just, I think one of the, if you don't mind,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, one of the, I'm going to say confusions, I suppose, here is, so there are multiple agreements, and certainly if you're a municipality that has multiple conservation authorities, it can get quite confusing. So the cost apportionment agreement for category 3 is legislated, And it is, and that is of what I'm referring to as time of the essence in terms of things. I will have to, if I don't have, for example, the city of Peterborough interested in those services, then it would fundamentally change how our budget would look in terms of some things. The MOU or the service agreement. Oh, so I have had many conversations with your legal staff and staff with respect to the cost apportionment agreement. The service agreement with respect to the planning services is a different agreement. And there is actually no legislation that requires conservation authorities and municipalities to have that agreement. That is something that we here in our watershed embrace. And I look forward to any comments and things that municipalities have. I have some back from your CAOs and your planning staff with respect to the service agreement for planning services. Two different agreements. One is legislated, one is not.
Everybody clear on that one? Excellent. All right, then we'll move on then to the next report, which is 2023-054, an amendment to the 2023 fee schedule to include filming fees. Jeanette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over time and also most recently, we have been approached by some filming companies, mostly based in the Toronto area, but not exclusively, that would like to come to our beautiful watershed and film some films. You might have read in the paper that there was some interest from the Star Trek company that they have moved on to other locations. However, we still do have some other interested organizations. Our current fee structure did not have this contemplated in it. And so I'm recommending these fees. These fees are actually recommended by the companies themselves and in consultation with other conservation authorities. So it's very much in line of the expectations. And in order to amend our fee structure, we do need a minister's approval, which I did actually reach out to the ministry and have just received that approval to make that amendment. So this is just being proactive, having the fees in our structure in case the other invitations or the other interests do actually come to be this fall.
All right, thank you, Jeanette. And coming from a municipality where we do have a fair bit of filming, it's handy to have the fee schedule already prepared, and definitely not try to figure it out as you're going along. So, any questions on this report? All right, seeing none, can I get a mover? Mr. Boyko and Mr. Wilford. All in favor? Thank you very much. All right, moving into reports for information. 2023-055, our second quarter performance objective and financial reports. And once again, back to you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to first speak to the performance objectives there, if I can, Mr. Chair. So this is representing second quarter, which is April to June. For us, there are a total of 66 performance objectives. Of that, 11 of them are completed, 49 are on schedule, 6 are not yet started, and there are none that are behind schedule or budget. And just a few highlights if I can. So in the second quarter, 113 permits were issued, 17 flood watch messages. We hosted over 1,700 students that participated in our spring water awareness program. We also completed and filed our 5-year review for our forest management, which is part of our requirement for our tax incentive program. We opened all 3 campgrounds and our conservation areas. We also had our provincial water quality and monitoring program start up. And there was also a significant amount of work on the amendments for Section 36 under the Clean Water Act and multiple meetings with our municipal partners. And we also completed our post-development monitoring programs that we have in partnership with the City of Peterborough. So I'm happy to take any questions with respect to the performance objectives. We're, as an organization, on track, and I have confidence that we'll be able to complete them by the end of this year. I'm also going to just highlight the permits issued. So again, speaking to those 113 permits that were issued and the breakdown within the various member municipalities. And we also have our standard timelines that we've been reporting on for more than coming up to actually almost 2 years, and noting that we've been doing well in terms of ensuring that we're within those timelines. And we added in 2022 the enforcement. So you can see some files on enforcement being closed and some then new files being started up. So I'm happy to answer any questions about those things. And then if there are, then we can move to the financial reports, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. So any questions on the performance and the permitting? Director Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions, Jeanette. On page 5 of the report, it says that you were to prepare a hazard tree policy, and that's not started yet. And I want to know exactly what it is we're going to do there. My concern is if we have a hazardous tree policy with the number of dead ash trees that the Conservation Authority has in its property, I don't think that we can meet a policy that says we've got to deal with them.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So again, this performance objective report is from April to June. And so in July, actually, we did start work on that. I am familiar with hazard tree policies and procedures. And I also kind of understand the sense of magnitude of the actual project and the actual work in terms of things. We do have a duty of care that we do need to make sure that at some level we do have some processes to make sure that where trees are being identified, that we do actually do something about them. And so there are some protocols and some methods to it. It's not just a widespread tree removal program. There's an actual step to this. And so I am borrowing a lot of policy work and procedures that I had done in my past career as well, and then making sure that it fits for our organization, also from a risk perspective. So
okay, I just want to make sure, Jeanette, that we're not biting off more than we can chew, because it is going to be monumental. If we adopt a policy that says that we're going to address dead trees at certain stages, we got to do it. And I'm not sure that I know that we do not have the capability to address the risks associated with dead ash trees on the conservation land. We don't do it, and we don't have it in the municipality. We certainly don't do it in the Conservation Authority.
Right. I completely understand the concern, and part of that is stating that in the policy is actually helping to mitigate risks.
Okay. The other question I have then is on page 10 of that report. You talk about a casino thermal monitoring policy. What is that?
On
See where
page,
it is?
I'm
It's
on page 10.
Page 10, which just has one section, and it is Natural Resource Conservation Services Waste Management Program, description of activities. At the request of, you see where it is, the very bottom right-hand corner there?
Yes. Yeah. So it's our post-development monitoring programs that we actually have in place. So that's just a list of a location.
So is there one at the casino? Is that what we're saying?
So that final report is completed now, and staff are actually completing the actual other locations. So that is no longer a project, but we've been now working on Clean Tech, Loggerhead, and Lily Marsh as our post-development monitoring agreements. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Boyko.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking, Jeanette, at page 7. And a question about the Lakefield campgrounds. We all knew going into this, and you and I have had discussions that there would be challenges taking on this project, and there were. Wonder if you have any comments about basically how are things going?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think things are going well now. I think that we have again worked very closely with your township staff, but also the campground seasonal staff in terms of lots of communication, lots of presence, and helping to put some process improvements in place. And so I would say that we are in a much better place than when we started and opened the campgrounds. We also have a lot of things that we've learned from this experience, and so we'll be able to bring them forward into the next season in terms of things. So.
That's great. Thank you. I look forward to learning about some of your ideas going forward. Thank you so much.
We do prepare. We do plan to bring a more comprehensive report specifically about our learnings for the board.
I understand. Thank you.
Jeanette. Director Black, you have a question?
Thank you, through your chair, Hanley. Joe and John have taken a bit of my thunder on my questions, but really it was the campground was obviously something I wanted to hear about, but the forest management plan that you talk about in the plan as well, what exactly are we doing at this stage? And the reason I'm concerned is we had Ontario Hydro come down our private road here last year and mark up a whole bunch of trees with us expecting they'd come back and cut them. They didn't. We asked again this year, are they coming back to cut them? No, we're not scheduled to have them cut till next year. Well, the paint will all be gone off the trees by then. And you know, the challenge with forestry on private roads is we lose our power every time there's a windstorm because all these dead ash trees are falling all over the place. So just exactly what do you mean? What is our forest management plan? What exactly are we doing boots on the ground in that plan?
Mr. Chair, the Conservation Authority has lands that have a managed forest plan on these lands. These lands aren't publicly accessible. And so we have an agreement, a license with the ministry, and so we have through that program we hire an arborist and a timber company, and they remove and harvest based on this plan that is registered. And so part of that is we gain revenues from the harvesting, and that it actually helps to support our budget. So in the 2023 budget, we have $20,000 of revenue from our managed forest harvesting in terms of things. So it's very different in that sense. It's very contained. There's oversight to that. And part of that program is that we need to complete reports to ensure that we have tax incentives for that property in terms of things. So, and that work was not able to be underdone in 2022, but it is now complete, coming to the completion right now as we speak for 2023. So.
Thank you. That clarifies it's managed forest stuff. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. And did you take your hand down there, Adam, or did you have a question?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Jumping back to the campgrounds for a quick second, on page 7, refurbishing the road at Warsaw. I know this is a carryover project from 2022 when we've had kind of this discussion at our Duro-Dummer council meetings as well, and just looking to see if there's a rough timeline for that one.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, we have that, we're working on preparing the RFP, and that will actually be undertaken in the fall when the actual Conservation Authority has less visitation. So we intended to do it when we have less people there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. I think that's all the questions I see about performance and activities permits. You want to move on to financial?
Yes, if I can, Mr. Chair. So in our financial report for the second quarter, again, remembering this is up until the end of June. So I do want to highlight one error, if I can, Mr. Chair. So in the column of percentages of budget, so our percentage of our budget for our revenue is at 57%, and that's tracking very well. And again, think of our revenues sometimes as seasonal. So we have a lot of revenues from campgrounds, for example, people going on booking their sites, but they might not show up until October or September, right? So we're seeing those revenues, they're seasonal revenues. And for expenses, it does say our expenses are extremely low. They are low, but not that low. So we're tracking right now at 40.7% of our overall budget of expenses, not 14.8. There was just an error in the formulas. So our revenues are tracking well. Our expenses are tracking well in the sense that they're lower and managed. And then just understanding sort of that seasonality, if you will, of when we do see a lot more revenues, they're not necessarily spread out throughout the whole year. We do have more expenses, obviously, in the summertime because we have our seasonal staff that are here as well, right? It's when our conservation areas are opened, it's when our campgrounds are open. Our expenses track higher in the summer as well. So I have no concerns. We've implemented a number of great improvements internally with our processes and monitoring. So I have no concerns from managing the finances. I'm happy to also, again, there's the capital in terms of things. So as was pointed out, we have the Warsaw Caves Road, which is a capital project that will be done in the fall. Again, this report is up until the end of June, but I can report that the Warsaw Dam railing has also been completed as well. So again, we'll manage to complete all of those things on the capital project list.
Excellent. All right. Any questions about the financial report? Well, you're getting off easy on that one, then, Jeanette. All right. Can I get a receiver then? Not seeing any other questions about any of these reports. Get Director Boyko and Director Black. All in favor? So received. Thank you very much. And then the next report is 2023-056, your CAO monthly report. Although I think we covered a lot of the content that we've gone through so far today.
We did. We certainly did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, an opportunity to meet with a lot of our stakeholders and some more coming up. We did actually not have the Low Water Response Committee when this report was prepared. That meeting did not occur. It will be rescheduled. And also an opportunity to get, as I say, out into the field to see our programs and things and actions. I do want to highlight two things, if I can, and for information for the directors. So one is the August 3rd storm that we did have here. It did actually affect our administration office a lot more than we actually realized. We've opened an insurance claim for things as we sort of work through the various technology issues in terms of things, but business continuity definitely was the highest priority that we had. So we were, things like some phones, our modem, our photocopier, things like that were actually affected through the storm and the electrical storm that we had. The second part, I'm going to actually leave on a good note. So the second part is, unfortunately, we've had some damage done to our new washroom at Selwyn Beach Conservation Area. Very, very sad to report. You will, if you follow us on any of our social media platforms, you'll see some messaging going out tomorrow. But those washrooms now have been closed as we sort of work through some of those repairs. And again, we've filed in the process of filing an insurance claim. But there was some damage to the outside of the building and also in the interior of the building. And on a good note, leaving this, you might have read in the Peterborough Examiner that Otonabee Conservation has been nominated for an award with the Peterborough and Kawartha Lakes Chamber of Commerce in the business section. They were just announced yesterday, so we are one of two other candidates in this category, and the event and the announcement is on October the 18th. That's it, Mr. Chair.
That's excellent, Jeanette. Thank you. Any questions or comments about Jeanette's report? Seeing none, can I get a receiver? Adam and Joe. Thank you. All in favor? So received. Thank you very much. Moving on, then we have correspondence and media coverage. There's a couple letters in there. Everybody had a chance to read them or wants to bring them forward, discuss them? None. We also have the media highlights. And anybody wants to discuss any of that, then I'll look for a receiver of our correspondence and media coverage. Dawn, so you've tried to get in there each time. You can move that one. And seconder, Ron Ashbourne. All right, all in favor of receiving our correspondence and media coverage. Thank you, everybody. Moves us on to open forum. Anybody have anything they want to bring forward or discuss that we haven't discussed already? No, seeing none, then I will look for a motion to move us into closed session with regard to discussing identifiable individual. Can I get a mover? Mr. Black,